Hello, trying again here. Um, I see somebody said in the chat most people are watching the other link. I don't know if there's another link. I had serious internet issues today. The internet was down completely for most of the afternoon, and I was real late getting the announcement up and getting this stream started, and I'm still not sure if it's working properly. Can you? Am I getting through now? I don't think. I don't know if it's working or not. Someone said it says working a little but cutting in and out. Okay, give it a try anyway, and if it's too bad, may have to try and do another stream. Maybe I'll try and do a makeup stream tomorrow night if I can't get. Yeah, okay. People are saying that the video's a bit glitchy, but the audio is coming through. So we'll persevere. Please let me know in the chat if it craps out completely, because this interface doesn't give me any indication. But the chat seems to be the most stable feature. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, better late than never. Hopefully this is going to come through. Today we're going to look at chapter 4 of the Vissudhimagga, which is titled the Earth Kasina, although it deals with considerably more than that. And I think it's important to understand the whole context of the Vissudhimagga to get an overview of this particular chapter. And this is really one of the critical ones. Let's get my copy here. The procedure that Buddhaghosa follows in this section on samatha meditation is that this is the first of there's 40 meditations that he discusses to more or less degree, and this is the first one, and he takes it as kind of the template for all of them. A lot of the information that's put forth in this chapter is carried on over into all the other chapters and just kind of assumed. There's a problematic issue with this, is because by taking Earth Kasina as the basis, everything else is kind of seen as a variation from that. I believe that in Buddhaghosa's time, it might be that Kasina meditation was the most commonly done meditation, and it serves as kind of the basic practice. Whereas nowadays we would probably have started this with mindfulness of breathing. Anyway, general thing about Kasina meditation is that you're using the visual base, and you take an actual physical object, which is called a Kasina, that you make, and the kasinas are either colored discs, they're colored kasinas, which we'll get to next week, or they're elements, earth, air, fire, water. And the earth kasina, he has a section describing how to make the earth kasina. You use clay that's of, he says, the color of dawn, and you work it in and make it as clean and smooth and nice as possible, and spread it out onto into the form of a disc on a neutral. The idea is to meditate on the element of earth as represented by this kasina. But actually, before he gets into any of that, as I said, because this is chapter, it deals with a lot of material that's general to all the meditations, he begins with some preliminaries. And some of this is quite interesting, actually. The first section of note is the 18 faults of a monastery. When you're and remember, this book was really written for an intended audience of bhikkhus. It wasn't written for lay people. It's assumed that the reader is a bhikkhu. So the idea here is when you're looking for a monastery to go to practice your meditation, you should avoid any monastery that has any one of these 18 faults. And most of them are just variations on a theme, and that if there's something in the monastery like fruit trees or flowering shrubs that would attract village people to come and gather things, they'll be making noise and walking around and creating a disturbance. Also, you're advised to avoid a new monastery where there is much building activity. Likewise, a dilapidated monastery where much needs repair. A famous monastery where many people come for sightseeing. One of the interesting ones is to avoid a monastery near the frontier of a kingdom. There is fear of kings, for perhaps one king attacks that place thinking it does not submit to my rule, and the other does likewise, thinking it does not submit to my rule. A bhikkhu lives there when it is conquered by one king and when it is conquered by the other. They suspect him of spying, and they bring about his undoing. So a monastery too close to the border is considered to have a fault. So that would include Arrow River, because we're only a few miles from the American border. And we actually have had our people stopped on the road by the Canadian Border Patrol and questioned. So that could be it could qualify as one of the faults of the monastery. Then there's the which I've already talked about a bit, the making of the earth kasina. So if you're actually using the earth kasina, there's a detailed instructions in the text about how to make a perfect one. And the idea with kasina is that you use the external object only as so long as you get, until you get a mental image, a nimitta that's quite clear, and you can use that as as your object of meditation. Then there's quite a bit of general advice on developing samadhi. It's a long section that's titled "The 10 Skills of Absorption," and the 10 skills, each one is described in some detail. The 10 skills are making the basis clean, which means cleaning the body, making sure that the body and clothing and so on are clean, not being distracted by uncleanliness. Maintaining balanced faculties, skill in the sign, that is to read the first paragraph in that section. Skill in the sign in producing the as yet unproduced sign of unification of mind through earth, Kasina, etc. The skill in developing the sign when produced. The skill in protecting the sign obtained by development. And there's quite a very long expansion on this, which includes developing the 7 things that lead to the or the 7 enlightenment factors, and each one has things that lead to their cultivation. For example, the investigation of Dhamma's enlightenment factor has 7 things that are conducive to it: asking questions, making the basis clean, balancing the faculties, avoiding of persons without understanding, cultivating of persons with understanding, reviewing the field for the exercise of profound knowledge, and resoluteness upon that investigation of states. And there's a similar list for each of the 7 enlightenment factors. So let's go in the sign. He exerts the mind on occasion when it should be exerted. He restrains the mind on occasion when it should be restrained. So this is it comes up in many contexts, the idea of keeping a balance in the mind, of not being too energetic or too over concentrated, but to either exert or relax the mind and keep the right tension. There's the story example that's often cited in this regard is the story of the monk Sona, who was a bhikkhu in the Buddhist time who had previously been a musician, and he was having trouble with his practice. And the Buddha said, when you were a musician and you were tuning your lute, what would happen if you tuned the string too tightly? Well, it would break. It would snap. What would happen if you tune it too loosely? Then it would be flat, and it wouldn't make a proper sound. What would happen if you tuned it just exactly right? Well, then you'd get a beautiful note. So it is with your mind. You have to be not too tight and not too loose. Let's find that balance. This comes up in many different contexts of balancing the faculties, balancing the enlightenment factors, and so on. He looks on at the mind with equanimity when it should be looked on with equanimity. So that is when you do find the balance, you just be at peace with it. You don't fix what's not broken. And avoidance of unconcentrated persons and cultivation of concentrated persons and resoluteness upon that concentration. As I said, all of these are expanded to a good degree. Now there's one thing I would like to, one paragraph I would like to particularly draw your attention to, because I think it's interesting in the discussion that comes up about access concentration. I'm using the common English terms here, although I don't really like them. Access concentration and absorption concentration. And I think that's something that is not really that distinction, the whole idea, the whole concept of access or neighborhood concentration is not found in the suttas, in the older strata of, or certainly not in the Nikayas. I think it might be in the Vissudhimagga. It's really a commentarial and Abhidhamma idea. And this paragraph is quite difficult. I'm referring to, if anyone has the book, I'm referring to paragraph 74 and 75. At least that, you know, it's actually 74 all the way through to 78, which relates the idea of access concentration and full absorption to the cognitive series. So the cognitive series is a idea from Abhidhamma. It's quite central to the Abhidhamma analysis. In Pali, it's the Chitta Vitti. If you want to learn about it, I would recommend Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, The Manual of Abhidhamma. The Chitta Vitti is an analysis of mind moments in an act of cognition. And it goes through different, the mind, when it takes an object, goes through different functional modes to up to 14 to process the information and actually comprise an act of cognition, of awareness of an object. And there are variations on this in terms of whether the mind is has full awareness, or whether it's dull, or whether it's entering into jhana, or entering into the enlightenment states, which in Abhidhamma are called magga phala, path and fruit. And in this analysis here, in terms of Abhidhamma, the the moment of what is called access concentration is the beginning of called in the Jhana series, the impulsions. That's part of that 14 states. There, towards the end, there's a series of up till I think it's the maximum can be 5. May have that number wrong, but there's a series of mind moments are called jhanas, which is usually translated as impulsions, and those are the moments when you're making karma, when you're actually exercising will, or cetana. And he actually discusses here a couple of different interpretations and different models, and rejects one by someone he calls the Elder Godata, which is something else a feature in this book, because he'll also put in other interpretations and then say, well, but the orthodox interpretation is so and so. And what happens is there's a mind moment called one of the jhanas is given the name of change of lineage. First, it's preceded by access concentration, which is still considered to be within the sense desire level of consciousness, whereas jhana is considered to be in the rupa bhumi, the realm of form, the level of the Brahma gods. So jhana actually constitutes, and this is, I think, really important for understanding what's meant by jhana. It's a key component of the idea, is that the mind actually jumps from one plane of consciousness to another, from the lowest plane to the form. And in terms of the Chittavritti, you have the access concentration, then you have the change of lineage when it's jumping into the higher level, then you have absorption, which is entrance into jhana. Now, why? This is important, I think, because it's an interpretation that now analyzed by Abhidhamma in these paragraphs. It makes it sound as if access concentration is just a single mind moment. It's not a state that's preserved. Although this seems to be contradicted in other parts of the book where he talks about what the mind is like in access concentration. In general, my personal opinion, I don't think the concept of access concentration is all that useful. I think it overcomplicates the whole idea of samatha meditation, which is there should be just a progressive deepening of samadhi. It's also could be said that sections like this in the book are what makes it difficult for people to read if they're new to this kind of material, because this whole section, these 4 or 5 paragraphs, assumes a prior knowledge of the Abhidhamma and of the mechanism of the Chittavritti, and it gets down into the weeds about how that works in the case of entering jhana. Then he goes into considerable analysis of the 4 jhanas and the jhana factors. And there's a lot of really good detail and information in here, including some stories in passing. For example, there's paragraph 96, there's a story about a daughter of a clan in the village of Weta Kalaka, who, when her parents were going to the monastery, and they told her she shouldn't go because she was pregnant and it's not suitable for her to be walking any distance. You just stay here and we'll gain merit for you. And so she sat on the balcony looking at the full moon and wishing she could go to the monastery and hear the chanting. And then piti arose in her, an uplifting piti, and she actually levitated in the air and floated towards the monastery. You'll find that in the Vissudhimagga, there's a lot of these stories that many of them are actually set in Sri Lanka. Some of them are taken from the commentaries, but some seem to be stories that were of a later time and have a setting in locales that are in Sri Lanka. So he goes through each of the jhanas and discusses the jhana factors. This is really the principal source. I think this chapter in particular, and the analysis of the jhanas and the jhana factors is the principal source for a lot of the later and modern writers who will encounter discussing the jhanas. They get their model and their scheme and their interpretation from this book, and particularly from this chapter. So for understanding the I would say the basic mainstream Theravada interpretation of jhana, This is probably the most important one to look at. Something also in terms of reading this text in translation, I may have mentioned this before, but it's probably worth reiterating. If you come across words that you're not quite sure what he's referring to, if you're used to other texts, other literature, other translations of things, if you look up in the index, that word will always include the Pali beside it, which is it's a very good index. And for example, he uses the word serenity quite often. And if you look it up in the index, you'll find that translating samatha, which most other translators have translated that as tranquility. So you see that, and you say, oh yeah, okay, now I know what he's talking about. He also has a glossary that has the Pali words, and you can see how he translates them into English.